So there is a contract that is already on the table, and there is a piece of the software that you want to incorporate while 911 is upgrading. Is that what I'm hearing?
So basically, in 2014, I believe it was 2014, we signed up with Zerker, who has since become Central Square. They host our jail management software, our CAD interface, basically the majority of the software that the sheriff's office uses to operate on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
911 is now buying into that same software. And along with that, there's an opportunity for us to create an interface between our agency and theirs, where when we get a 911 call or they get a 911 call, we can transfer that information back and forth, and it just basically will help us interface. And it's I guess, situational awareness is what we're looking at. If there's something going on, they would be able to see what we've got going, and vice versa.
Okay. So are you saying that right now the our 911 system can't see what the sheriff's office has going on? Like they don't, they're
That's
no
correct.
bi-directional? Oh wow. Okay, so who's transferring calls then? How do you all get calls if
Basically, it's as simple as that. It's transferring a phone call. It would be no different than me calling you and on an inter-office phone and then transferring that call somewhere else. That's the level of our connectivity at this point, and has been. With this software upgrade at 911, we have an opportunity to make it a lot more than that. We can actually physically see um, via our software what's taking place and what's going on. And they would be able to see what's going on with us. And when we have an opportunity or whatnot, if we have a need rather to transfer that call to 911 or them to us, we could do that and push that information, which an operator has already taken the time to enter, as opposed to having to get on a phone and rehash the whole thing with another 911 operator or a sheriff's office dispatcher to get caught back up with what's going on. If that makes sense.
okay. Um it makes sense. However, I'm a little baffled that this is not already happening. So how many operators do you all have in the sheriff's office manning the system?
I think we have about 3 to 4 down there at any given time, depending on the workload.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. Okay. I was trying to see. Okay, so I know these are two separate departments. Sheriff's has their own budget. E911 has their own budget. They're basically self-sustaining. So Director Harley,
Good morning. Good morning.
good morning.
So, all right. So I just wanted to just kind of just clear something up regarding how the 911 calls come in. So anytime a citizen calls 911 through landline, through voice over internet protocol, or through cell phone or text to 911, anytime a citizen reaches 911, those 3 digits, all of those calls come through the Douglas County E911 system as Douglas County's PSAP. So we are Douglas County's public safety answering point. So every time a citizen dials 911, it comes here. What then happens is if it is determined that law enforcement is needed and it is outside of the city of Douglasville limits, that call is then transferred to the sheriff's office for law enforcement. If it's determined that both fire EMS and law enforcement are needed, then our operators actually process the call through something called emergency medical dispatch, which is a medical tool that we use as the Douglas County 911, as the county's public safety answering point, and then the call is transferred to the sheriff's office. So as far as 911 is concerned, when a citizen dials 911, that does not go to the sheriff's office. That comes through the Douglas County 911 system as the public safety answering point. Our relationship with Central Square is not a new relationship. We have had some level of interaction with Central Square since about 1996. The company itself has changed names numerous times, so they've been other things, but they are now Central Square. What we are working on now is an upgrade to the Central Square system that we already have. And so that go live date has been pushed. The original go live date was in February of 2022, so it's right after I started here with Douglas County. That date was pushed back to October, and now our go live date is November 29th. That delay actually is due to integration with fire and EMS's mock alert system. So the vendor is trying to work with mock alert, which is their station alerting system when a call comes in, and so that's what the delay is. So that's kind of how that goes.
Okay, so I'm assuming, Mr. Wilson, that because of the delay, once you all found out that there was a delay, you said that this was the opportunity for the sheriff's office to get in on the system while the upgrade is being made. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, ma'am. I think this is something that we probably should have been looking at from the get-go. And just to touch on what Ms. Harley said, I think what software they originally had, I may be mistaken here, but I believe it was SunGuard, which was purchased by Central Square, and we're kind of in the same boat. We had Zerker, which was also purchased by Central Square, so there was no pre-existing opportunity for us to have this interface, but now with all these companies coming together, we've got an opportunity to do that.
Okay, so then my question is, how do the Board of Commissioners come into play? How does technology come into play? What is it that you would need from us? Because usually I think the sheriff has their own IT department and their own switchboard. So how do we come into play?
So basically what it boils down to is a question of money at this point. The integration, we've been told, is going to cost approximately $34,060. That's just for our side. And then 911 would probably have a similar cost.
Okay, so in order for you all to do this, 911 would incur costs and the sheriff's department would incur costs?
That's what we're being told. And ultimately, that's going to be a question for the Board of Commissioners as to whether or not they want to go forward with that. But I thought it was vital that, you be presented with this information now, because we don't want to miss this opportunity if we do want to go forward.
Got you. And, okay. And it's not in the IT department for the sheriff's office to assume this cost. That's why you're coming to us?
No, ma'am. We didn't know what cost would be associated with this, nor in the initial planning what had been budgeted for the upgrade at 911. We were under the impression that was something that was being looked at.
Director Harley, yes, you have the floor. I see your hand.
Yes. Okay. So Central Square has something. They have three different kind of CAD to CAD interfaces. So they have something called Aware, Notify, and Unify. So the Aware portion actually is built into the current project that we have. I think what the sheriff's office, and you can correct me, what the sheriff's office was looking at was Unify. So, and then just to kind of recap, the transfer that happens from Douglas County 911 to the sheriff's office, that would not end with a CAD to CAD bidirectional interface. So we would still have to transfer the physical caller to the sheriff's office, because that goes into the phone system, which is a totally different
setup. So that would still take place. And just for stats, last year we transferred 43,257 calls to the sheriff's office, again, as the county's public safety answering point. And so that process would still have to happen as far as getting the caller over to the sheriff's office dispatch. What the bidirectional CAD to CAD interface would allow is for the sheriff's office to see the calls that 911 is currently working, and for 911 to see the calls that the sheriffs are currently working. Because of course they may receive calls when someone dials that 10-digit line into the sheriff's office dispatch. But all of the calls that are involving someone actually physically dialing, texting 911 are going to come here with Douglas County 911 first.
Okay, got it. So this is basically to help the sheriff's office just to see what's in queue. All of the things that's still happening would still happen.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. But our concern is that if you call 911, you spend 3 minutes explaining what's going on at your house. Say you were to have somebody trying to break into your house.
Mm-hmm.
You give them the details of the individual. You give them information about where you are in the house, what you're seeing, and all that. When they transfer us the call, basically all we know is that we've got somebody breaking into a house. All the notes that they've taken into their CAD, we could be seeing, but we're not. So it's something that would speed up the process, would minimize the chance for there to be a mistake made. This is kind of an extreme example, but suppose, you had seen a firearm and that was reported to you at 911, and that information is put into the CAD, but the operator in a hurry neglects to mention that to us. That's something that would be very important for us to know. So this is something that from both aspects, same one thing, if we transfer a call back to 911, that information would seamlessly flow to them as opposed to us having to rehash the entire 3 or 4 minute conversation.
I get you. Okay, so is there any more information? Deputy Connor, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also, Ms. Harley had mentioned that, they're taking in calls that could be related to medical and law enforcement. And so their primary responsibility at that point is to gather the medical information and start that medical process. And so while they're doing that, the phone call won't be transferred until they've got that sorted away. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been some time since I've been involved in that, but so that period of time that they're taking, our law enforcement officers are just kind of going in blindly in a sense that, or maybe delayed in getting the call. So that's another aspect of the integration.
Thank you for that, Director Harley.
And yes, ma'am. That is true. So yes, when a caller dials 911 and it is determined that law enforcement is needed in those areas of Douglas County that aren't the city of Douglasville, where the city of Douglasville police would be responding, yes, we do process the medical portion of the call, and then again, the actual caller is transferred to the sheriff's office. So then the sheriff's dispatch actually obtains information needed for sheriff law enforcement response to respond to the call. So that's kind of the system that we currently operate under in Douglas County, which is a little bit different. But that's the system like that we
very
operate.
Redundant. Yeah. So is there a better way to do this? Because in my mind, I'm going, and this is just me I'm looking at the process and I'm like, is there a better way to do this? I don't know, because I'm not in E911, but I do understand technology and processes. So is there a better way to do this besides doing the extra added CAD? Because if the technology is there has to be a better way to do this. That's just me. So I don't know. I'm asking questions just to get a better understanding. Anyone?
Uh, I go back a little ways, so, in been in my experience, our dispatchers, okay, so I guess what you're looking at is, should the 911 center be dispatching for the sheriff's office, just like they dispatch for the CDPD? Um, the thing that was with that is our dispatchers, they dispatch, at 911. Our dispatchers dispatch, and they're responsible for answering GCIC, which is, just to give you an example, if a vehicle got stolen,
Mhm.
another agency found it, they send a hit confirmation, and that we got 10 minutes to respond, it's validated, and that sort of thing. Well, our dispatchers would also enter those items where 911 dispatchers wouldn't. So in order for us to integrate so that the 911 would have to dispatch, you'd have to have dispatchers added to 911, and you'd have to leave our remaining employees here to get those things entered. Now, we have started moving away and created a GCIC section, but it's not able to sustain itself at this point. So that was part of the reason. And then the other part of the reason, the way I understood it from the years that I've been here, was that the sheriff wanted to have control over his dispatchers because he wanted things done a certain way. And that's been through the last three sheriffs. So if you have an employee that's at 911, they're dispatching for our agency, and they dispatch in a way that we don't like, or they do something disciplinary, that sort of thing, then we have to kind of fall back on 911 because they would be responsible for that employee. And sometimes that works out, sometimes it don't. They may not do enough that we think is expected if they continue. Now, we haven't worked with Director Harley very long, but I think each of the sheriffs that I work for has wanted to maintain that control as well for that reason.
So what I hear you saying is this kind of boils down to training and expectations. And if everybody could get on board, the county may could save some money and some time for the citizens in getting responses. That's something we probably need to look at working on, because I'm pretty sure that other counties our size probably had exactly what you said, Deputy Connor, and they've now integrated, because it seems like the processes are off, they're disjointed. And I'm only looking at it from a technology standpoint. Of course, I'm not there in the office, and I'm not there seeing how you all do everything. But it just, in my mind, I'm wondering, how do others do it, and what is the cost for a county our size? Because at the end of the day, all the Board of Commissioners do is legislate and appropriate. And we got a lot of needs, and you know that we got a lot of needs around here. So everybody's asking for money. So at all times, I'm trying to see, how can we better do this? How can we streamline, and how can we cut costs in order to better provide services for the county and for you all?
The only thing really, you'd be looking at is you'd have to hire more people. Because like Major Wisdom said, if we're running 3 to 4 operators on a 24-hour basis, that's at least 12 operators. We would need at least 6 of those to enter the GCIC stuff. So you're looking at you could move 6 down there, but you're also looking at, I don't know how their schedule's set up, but I think you'd have to have additional employees and, with salaries and benefits. But you would gain, a better responsiveness for the citizens when 911's called, because there is a delay.
Okay.
And
Yes, Director
Commissioner Carter. Yes, so my background actually lends itself to a consolidated 911 system. So at Fulton County, we actually dispatch for Sheriff, Marshal, North and South Fulton PD, and so fire and EMS.
as all separate radios. And each radio had its own nuance that the operators were trained to accommodate. And then we actually consolidated later on when North Fulton, when the cities in North Fulton incorporated and they formed their own 911. We actually consolidated with some South cities in Fulton County, with Union City and with Fairburn. So I've gone through consolidations before, and just arguably so, there are some growing pains because what you're doing is you're kind of infusing employees, because we absorbed Union City and Fairburn's employees that wanted to come on board. So I know what that process is like. And Douglas County 911 actually was built out with the hopes that one day we would be able to consolidate. So we have two open pods that are just not even staffed in the 911 center, with that future growth in mind. And then as the county continues to grow, we'll definitely have to add staff to the 911 system.
So when you said that you have pods, what does that mean? You have
Open consoles. So our consoles are kind of circular in nature, and so we have 8 positions that are not manned at all. That were included in the build of this facility for future growth.
got you. Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Wilson, I see your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say that I think ultimately we probably are moving to a total consolidation. I don't think that's something that we'll be able to avoid indefinitely. But I think technology affords us an opportunity to do something that's kind of unique, or would have been unique a few years back. Prior to COVID, there was a lot of things that were done a certain way. When we had to have a court hearing or something like that, we had to physically move the inmate to the courthouse, and we did that day in and day out. When COVID hit, we found out that that wasn't really necessary. We could have the inmate here in our building conduct a court hearing remotely, and that's something that this technology affords us to do. While we're not necessarily putting an operator in 911, we can work seamlessly, I think, with the technology that we have available to us. We can have our operator here and still kind of sort of be in that same room with them working the call, and probably at a fraction of what it would cost us to hire the necessary manpower to move our entire operation down there at this time.
Got you. What I hear you and Director Harley saying is eventually we got to be set at the way that it would be consolidated. So that's something that the Board of Commissioners, the Sheriff's Office, E911, all of us really need to take a look at, because I hate to keep band-aiding something and we're growing. We're not shrinking. I had 2 new neighbors to move into my neighborhood this weekend. So we're not shrinking. We're continuing to grow. You told us the cost. This would take how long? You've told us the cost on your end. You told us the cost on possibly E911s, and what would be the timeline for this if this was the way that the Board of Commissioners, one, had the funds to decided to do it.
I believe they would be able to incorporate this by the time that the 911's software went live. I haven't had specific conversations with them about that, but the integration should be fairly seamless. It's built into our system and theirs, and so it's just probably a matter of letting them know that we want to do this and then providing us with any training that would be necessary.
Okay, would you need any help from our technology committee? Would Mr. Betancourt needed to be in on this, or would it just be the sheriff's IT department?
The sheriff's office IT department, and whatever 911 would require on their end.
Okay, and you know, I will state this and then I will open it up for any of anyone else who wanted to take the floor. But at some point, we need to get E911 GCIC certified and do a consolidation. It just seems to me it would be a lot easier and better for the constituents who, the citizens who would be dialing into the E911 system if we're all one together. So that's something I'm hopeful that you will get, you know, you or Deputy Connor can set that up. So that would be our next push, especially if we're looking at what's to come down the pike in the next 5 years for the county. The planning starts now. It doesn't start 5 years from now because we have to incorporate it and get the funds for it. Deputy Connor, I see your hand. Or is that from last time? Do you have
I just want to mention that this is not a patch. Regardless of we do it now or we do it later, if the integration goes and the operators go to 911, the officers, the sheriff deputies have still got to see the CAD notes and what's going on in their cars. So right now, our system does that. If they get moved to 911, their system's going to have to do that. So this is not really a patch. It would be something that if you did it now, you wouldn't have to do it later, or if you don't do it now, you'll have to do it later once the integration. The second thing, 911 is not a law enforcement agency. So when we talk about they are GCIC certified down there to you know run and use the system, but they're not entry, and so you have to be a law enforcement agency to enter articles. So they would never be able to do that. The city of Dokesville employs their own person to do that. And then, like I said, we started doing the GCIC section for entry. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that.
But we would have somebody at the E911 system that is from your office if we move the sheriff's dispatch over to E911.
If they remained our employees and we moved them down there,
Yeah.
they would. If they're, it's kind of like they would be more of an employee of 911 at that point, another department. I guess we could move them down there and remain our employees, and that may give the sheriff the authority he wants over the dispatchers, but they're still going to have to answer to Ms. Farley because they're in her area. And so now you've got something where you're kind of reporting to two different supervisors, and I don't know, as far as human resources goes, how that would really work.
Got you.
We
Director Harley?
yes, I'm sorry. So yes, we because we are a law enforcement entity. Of course, we're not an entering agency, but we've had in the past, from my past experience, a relationship with the law enforcement agency where they maintained their own GCIC as enterers of information. And then that was just a conversation between 911 and the law enforcement agency. So that's not a difficult push, if you will, at all. As far as and I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but we definitely that's definitely not a difficult push because that's what we're currently doing with Douglas Field PD. So again, they are the law enforcement entity, so they maintain their own GCIC as enterers of information.
Got you. And while you have the floor, to pick up this added cost, is that within your budget at this point? Because they said that they would have a cost and then you would have a cost. So what does that look like?
Okay, so for us, the agreement with Central Square was signed last March by Madam Chair. And so that cost to us is $117,000 a year up until 2025, with $95,250 being 911, and then the remainder being for the fire EMS portion. And so, like I said, the AWARE part of the CAD to CAD interface is already built into our project. Now, when we met with the sheriff's office on the 11th of August, the Central Square representative actually sent a quote to the sheriff's office. At that time, I also asked him to send a quote to E911. He did not. And so because he was told that we all had the same budget. And so I did on the meeting tell him that we did not, that 911 funding is a bit different. But he did not send the quote here. So I did have an opportunity to speak with him on Thursday. And at that time, he told me that he actually could not provide 911 a quote from his end, that we have weekly touch base meetings with Central Square with our current project manager. He said that is who we would have to obtain a quote for, because we currently have an open project with Central Square. So the funding for our project would be different. The quote for our project would be different than the quote for the sheriff's office.
I get it.
She has not gotten back to me yet. I did send her an email on Thursday. She has not gotten back to me yet. But we've currently, of course, budgeted out, because budgets were due on Friday. So we budgeted out the $25,000, which we were under obligation for the $117,000 a year for the project. We did not budget out any more for Central Square, since we are currently in this current project. So that's kind of where we are right now with that. And of course, you know, we are trying to stay within what our 911 fees can pay for, so that we don't have to come back to the county to ask for funding under general funds, because we still have that big radio system project that's still hanging in the balance that the county will have to pay for. So we definitely wanted to stay within our existing budget. But I don't know at this time what that's gonna cost. We do have more seats, which actually pushes the cost up. So we have 17 seats that we would have to pay for, because we would have to outfit both the 911 center and the backup center, because anything that we do to the current 911 center, we also have to do to the backup center for as long as that's standing. So we would have 17 seats that we would need outfitted. And like I said, we have Aware. I think what the sheriff's office was looking at was the Unify, which gave a little bit more back and forth control, but Aware actually does allow each agency to see bidirectionally what's going on. Unify just kind of just gives even more, actually allows, you know, real-time updates and all of that stuff. So right now, we don't know what the costs would be until we hear back from our project manager. And we have a meeting with her on every Tuesday at 11:30. So hopefully she'll be able to respond to that tomorrow, and we have a better look at what it's gonna cost, and see if it's something that we could afford to do at this point, because this project is very pricey. It's very pricey at $117,000 a year. That's a very pricey project. So
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'll open the floor. Commissioner Mitchell, do you have anything to add?
Listen, first of all, great job, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And to Ms. Harley, thank you for definitely keeping in the forefront that we've got a radio project that's interesting approaching us and fastly approaching us. But going back to this, so Ms. Harley, first of all, aren't the E911 funds are enterprise funds, correct? Am I correct in that statement?
yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's what I want to make sure of. So that's kind of one of those separate buckets that, you know,
Yes.
we deal with. It's not like a part of our budget. It is, but it isn't. So with the city of Douglasville that have already come on board from the mere fact of collaboratively doing this, or is it they're still separate as the sheriff finding himself.
So because we are the county's PSAP, you know, everything in Douglas County is under Douglas County E911, just as with fire and EMS. So we, you know, of course, operate for the entire county in that way.
Got it. So, and the reason I'm asking it that way though is to try to figure out, because it sounds like this is kind of the way to go to be efficient and to be definitely cost efficient in doing this. And as Commissioner Carthen stated earlier, do we put the Band-Aid on it and try to get there, or do we just go ahead and try to appropriate, if that's the case, of the numbers that we need to deal with? What are those numbers? So we can kind of know what those numbers are. And I think you stated that the sheriff hasn't given you those numbers to know what that really is as to his side of the cost in doing this.
Yes, and so with the city of Douglasville, so they have their own, as far as CAT, they have their own separate subscription that they pay for. And so we don't pay for theirs. We just dispatch for City of Douglasville PD as a part of Douglas County. And so with those 911 fees are collected countywide, and that is what sustains your county 911 public safety answering point.
Okay. Now, I'm not trying to separate them, but in the event that we're trying to separate them, because I think we're looked at as the county from the sheriff end of it as an overall, that encompasses everybody. City of Douglas, Villa Rica, also everybody. And whereas the E911 side of this cost analysis from the city of just Douglasville, get along, Austell and others, how is that broken out to make sure that everybody is kind of paying their fair share, or at least trying to be a part of this E911 cost, because we're collecting this from a county perspective? Am I correct? Go ahead.
So we collect 911 fees from everybody in Douglas County.
That is correct.
So yes. So those 911 fees are collected. You know, anytime somebody has that $1.50 charge on any landline phone businesses, you know, even if it's say a PBX business. So every phone that's within a business that can dial 911 has to incur that $1.50 cost to sustain the county's public safety answering point, which is Douglas County 911.
So how do we assure that whatever the cost to the sheriff is also dispersed in the same, you know, layout as it would be for the city of Douglasville or anybody else?
Well, with the sheriff's office having their own sheriff dispatch, you know, that's kind of a separate entity, if you will. And so with us, you know, of course, every time somebody dials 911, we are just ensuring that if law enforcement response is needed, that those calls are then transferred to the sheriff's office for law enforcement. I guess I'm maybe not clear on what you're asking, but as far as 911 fees, those fees are stipulated by the official code of Georgia, annotated as far as what we can and cannot spend those funds on. And so those funds have to be spent specifically on 911.
And I get that, yeah. And maybe what I'm trying to get at is though, with the way that the way the structure is now, and as opposed to kind of bringing everything together and making it as one, and the sheriff employees will work out of E911 as well as the city of Douglasville employees. You know, even though that they can do certain things that you guys can't as an E911 operator. How is that fee? How did you come up with the fee of what that the sheriff would need to have dealt with in this whole makeup of what we're talking about now, the technology piece of this? How did that fee come about to say the sheriff will need to add an additional X, Y, and Z cost?
The city of Douglasville doesn't have any employees in the Douglas County 911 Center. All of our employees are Douglas County employees. And so with that, if
if it were, can you repeat the other part of your question, I guess, because I'm still trying to.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to get at is we're saying there's a cost that's going to be encompassed by the sheriff department that will be associated with this possible software packaging. Or
Okay,
whatever.
okay. So that cost was actually, that was the cost that the sheriff's office was quoted by the vendor based on the number of licenses that they would need. The city of Douglasville actually already has their own subscription package. I don't know what it costs them because again, that's separate of us. With E911, the company Central Square has not quoted us yet, so I don't know what it will cost. But we already have part of the CAD to CAD interface included in the project that we're currently under.
Got it. So, and pulling this all together, it would be smart to do it all together as one with all the cities and everybody else to do it from what you spoke about earlier, if I heard you correctly. It would only
Yes,
make.
yes, the city of Douglasville, they already have their separate subscription. I don't know what it costs them. And the sheriff's office has actually been quoted by Central Square for what it would cost them. And so if we were to go to the Unify, I don't know yet what it will cost us. We actually already have Aware built into our project, so that part wouldn't cost us anything additional. But the company did say that because we have an open project, that it would be a different cost for us, and because we have more seats that we would have to pay for, that would actually be a different cost for us as well. We should probably find out by tomorrow what that cost would actually be, and then we would have to come back before you all to amend the existing agreement that Madam Chair signed on in March of 2021.
Got it. Okay, and Connor, so on your end, whatever that number is, whatever that personnel cost, whatever that number turns out to be, that's where you're saying the sheriff hasn't really, in his budget, has adjusted that potential amount is not there. And we're asking the Board of Commissioners to say, hey, can we add, I'm just going to use a number of $100,000 to your budget to kind of carry this particular project through. Am I correct?
Right, yeah, and I'm not sure, I know this happened prior to Miss Harley coming in, and Major Wisenhunt and Rod Ross are our technology guys, and I don't know how much they were aware that this project was going on. I think it was just recently that we realized that all that's getting implemented, and that we had that opportunity to get in it. But to answer your question, we haven't budgeted anything in, and I'm like Ms. Harley, I didn't put anything in for the 23, and with anticipation of this.
I guess I'll close on this. So what's is there a timeline? Meaning, if we need to have a question and an answer by this certain date time frame in this whole makeup to say move forward with it with budgeting that particular number, whatever that number is, and collaboratively coming together with all these elements of the sheriff, E911, city of Douglas, and everybody else. And I'm assuming the sheriff will be okay with those guys working out of E911 and answering to Ms. Harley, hypothetically, and working for the sheriff side of things. Am I correct in that?
Well, I haven't, this is new, I haven't discussed it with the sheriff, but they're all county employees down there. It wouldn't be anything, to our employees. We just have to look at, what the sheriff thoughts were on moving them. I know that we've had some situations where our radio system went down, and it was pretty seamless that they went down there and went right to work. It's just the added cost of the duties that we would have to retain some of them here to help enter the GCIC stuff, because they've got a dual role.
But couldn't that dual role be done there, or it has to be done in both places? I mean, I mean, I don't know that. Excuse me for my ignorance. So,
Well, I think physically it could be done down there, but I think with the I don't know, I'd have to ask, Rod would have to answer this question. With GCIC, they're very strict on the policies, and for us to remove items from here to deliver them down there to be entered, that may cause a security issue with GCIC.
Yes, that entering would have to stay at the sheriff's office. DCIC would not go for that.
and the reason I'm asking this is because it all got to be on the table. Because if we don't ask all of these questions now and find out exactly what we can and can't do, because we want it to be what I call efficient, but if the efficiency means they still have to stay where they are, hypothetically, or a portion of them staying to do the entering on the sheriff's side of things, then that's kind of how they would either interoperate or operate. But I mean, that's a question for Ms. Harley, you and Sheriff Pounds and others, kind of how that works. Last but not least, Alex. So I don't know if you're familiar with the software, or what's your take on our infrastructure? Trying to be the infrastructure or the platform, or you tell me, is that doable? I guess.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Central Square and CAD. And just for the citizens that are going to hear this, CAD means, I believe, computer assisted dispatch, which is a system that sends your address and all that information to the police cars. So they have that information when they pull up to the scene to an event. So yeah, there's many ways that we can integrate this. I do believe that having the sheriff's office and E911 being able to share that information is something that's worthwhile pursuing. Whether we consolidate now or we consolidate later on in the future, being able to transfer that digital information to the responding emergency vehicles, whether it's on the sheriff's side or on the fire department side, I think that's a benefit both ways. But we have the capabilities to do this both on our infrastructure end. So we can definitely support this from an IT department perspective.
Gotcha, got it. And last but not least, and I know this has been going a lot longer than we anticipated. Ms. Harley, in the whole scheme of things, does this make sense for us, meaning Chair and myself, to really try to move this agenda item forward because of the services that E911 provides? With the coming together deal or keep it separate deal? I mean, what's your take, your true essence of doing this or not doing this, or doing it the way that makes it more efficient for the end user, meaning the citizens of Douglas County?
Okay. Well, I mean, it's several ways that you can look at it. So, from the perspective of say officer safety, it is beneficial for all the agencies involved to be able to see each other. Currently, with Fire EMS, they actually through MDT they see their calls. With City of Douglasville, from 911 perspective, they see their calls. From the sheriff's office in 911, that actually was not the case. And so from that perspective, yes. However, like I said before, the caller still has to be transferred to the sheriff's office, and that's a whole different system. That is the phone system. So with that, when the call is transferred, the sheriff's office does not get the what's called Annie-Alley. So they don't get the automatic number identifier. They don't get the automatic location identifier. That information comes through the 911 system. And so from the sheriff's office perspective, their dispatch has to obtain that information from the caller. So we do what's called a warm transfer. So our operator will say to the sheriff's dispatch,
we have this going on at this particular address. Um, and so from there, the caller would then repeat information to the sheriff dispatch. So would it be more effective for us to be a consolidated 911 center for the entire county? Yes, because it would eliminate the need to transfer. But as it exists right now, it would be beneficial to kind of see that CAD to CAD interface, in addition to, of course, that call still having to be transferred to the sheriff's office. So yes and yes would be my response, that it would be beneficial for how we exist right now, but in the bigger scheme of things, and particularly as we grow as a county, as far as transferring calls, it would be more beneficial for us to be consolidated.
Well stated. Well stated. I'll just leave it. But again, thank you again, and Madam Chair, I think that's all the Q&A I got here. But I think this is something we need to definitely take a hard look at and understand there is a cost associated with this, and decide on and figure out kind of where these costs or expenses will come from. But I think it's worth it for the citizens of Douglas County to have this right. Not that it's wrong now, but have a better use in this, and it could be more efficient with when relaying information to the sheriff and relaying it back versus having to do it twice or input it 2 or 3 times. If we're trying to be paperless and be more efficient, then I think this is probably the way to definitely take a hard look at and look at the real true costs, and then move from that point forward. So I'm with Ms. Harley on this one. So yes and yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. Is there anything else to come before us? Is there anyone else would like to speak in regards to this?
Yes, I have, now, I know Commissioner Mitchell thought he was gonna jump on and off real quick this morning, but let me throw you a curveball.
Okay.
So I can get the details from Major Wisenhunt, but basically, Central Square rolled out an update to our JMS system, and since March, we've been fighting with them to try to get it fixed. It causes some liability concerns, and they'll have to explain the details of it. But basically, whatever update they did is affecting, say, when Zerker or Central Square pushes the information to the medical department that oversee our inmates, the information could get messed up. We could give them the wrong medication. We can not give them any medication. And this has been going on since March. They pushed and pushed and pushed. And then here recently, we involved our legal team to try to get a solution to get them to move on. And we were hoping that since we were in the middle of this project, that we had a little bit more bite to our bark, because right now we're not real satisfied with it. So if it continues and they can't get it corrected, we'll have no other choice but to look for another system. And now where we're at.
Okay, so that throws a whole different. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay. So in your in the position that you're in, Deputy Connor, if this happens, then you can push them to do what they need to do on their end. Plus, you can see into what E911 is doing. Is that what you're saying?
We were hoping that that we would have a little bit more influence, with the county as a whole, Douglasville, saying, look, we're going to this system and we're getting all on board in the whole county, but you're lacking over here. We need y'all to fix that, and so that we can continue to have a good working relationship and not have to look for another avenue of software. Now, when we initially got Zerker, it was great. It had great service. When they sold it, you got a big company, and you know they keep buying up companies, and you don't have the customer service. So I just wanted to bring that up and let you know that, and you're looking at probably a $2 million project if they can't fix this, but
Right.
where would we stand with liability? If they have-
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, wow. Okay. So, have you talked to our legal? Has our legal gotten involved, Deputy Connor?
Yes, ma'am. Just recently, we had been reaching out since August the 2nd, and we finally got together last week. And Director Perry has been in the email chain. He's kind of aware of what all is going on.
Okay.
And they have sent or are sending a letter to Central Square's legal department, kind of outlining some things that are in our contract and you know, kind of saying, y'all need to take a look at this.
Okay. Got you. Okay. So it seems like there needs to be a bigger conversation with other entities in regards to this, so that we can all get on one page. Because you're right, just the sheriff's department trying to push it, but if the county as a whole has a 6-figure contract with them, plus the city of Douglasville, we do have some leverage. So I see your point. Thank you. Thank you. And I see Attorney Coleman, you're on the line.
Right. I just wanted to confirm that we did have discussions with the sheriff's office. One of the problems that we have is that most software companies put limitation of liability provisions in their agreements, and they limit their liability significantly. This agreement was done, I think, back in 2014, and you know the limitation of liability provisions then were pretty serious, and you know back in those days they weren't negotiated as much as they are now. We have begun the process of trying to change the limitation of liability provisions to get as much coverage as we can on new contracts that we've been involved with. But this one has a very serious limitation of liability. So the leverage that Chief Connor is discussing now is important, and we definitely reference it in the letter that we're about to send this morning. We don't directly reference this new project. However, we just reference the fact that the county is doing a lot of business with it. And hopefully that'll at least get us into conversation, at which point we can talk about the new, the new contracts. We're sending it to their general counsel. Hopefully that'll get more attention than we've been able to get by having the sheriff's department talk to the folks that they deal with. So I just wanted to kind of give you that further explanation.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so we have your request. Again, the appropriations for this, we would need all ends to ensure, because it seems like Director Harley would have to incorporate some costs that she had not thought about, which means she may have to get it from the Board of Commissioners. Obviously, the Sheriff's Office is here asking the Board of Commissioners for this cost, so we have to have all numbers in. And while we're getting that, I guess from both you, we would have our legal department pushing in to see how, if we move forward, how this can be a better benefit to the sheriff's department and the constituents that it involves. So thank you so much for all of this. This has been an educational moment for us. So I appreciate it, but I do see that we at least got a path forward. We just need to get some things together. So thank you, Deputy Connor and everyone, and Director Perry. Since I didn't know you were involved, so you have eyes and ears where Commissioner Mitchell and I don't. So we expect for you to keep us updated and get us where we need to be if this needs to come before the Board of Commissioners as a whole.
Yes, and Commissioner Carthen, I did review the letter, Michael, that you orchestrated. I believe it was on Friday. I was able to read that over. Looks fine to me. In regards to this entire process, we've had a lot of conversation. And I agree, Commissioner Crowder, it has been very, very educational and eye-opening. I would like to see us have a sit-down conversation offline about this entire structure. It just, to me, it seems a little convoluted. It seems like it could be done a lot better, with the agencies around, and we have a benefit in that Director Harley has been through this process before with a much larger department. And, from what I heard from her, even though we're doing this right now, it's working, but in order for us to realize our true efficiency, consolidation has to be considered and looked at in a real way. I would like for, and I have this conversation with Director Harley, a ad hoc committee, if you would, to kind of talk this thing through and see how it would look if we were to consolidate, and how long it would take, and so on and so forth. So good conversation today. I agree with you, and duly noted in regards to keeping you informed about how this process is progressing.
Okay. And the appropriations.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part for us, for the commissioners. All right. Thank you so much. So this is not a no, this is not a yes, this is, we're gonna work in tandem to get this done, Deputy Connor. Thank you so much. Is there anything else to come before this committee? If not, yeah.
No, not from our end. That's what I was going to say.
Commissioner Mitchell, anything else before we?
No. But I do agree with Fred that we probably should have an offline conversation, because there's a couple of things that needs to be kind of clearly explained and understood, versus assuming that this person is handling this or not. So I think we need to have that, and to include, Connor with the sheriff, to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. Because if we make this move, it's going to have to be a move that's going to be most efficiently done, not just the Band-Aid. It's got to be, this makes more sense to do it this way, based on the dollars and cents, based on the efficiency of the operation and so on. So I think that sidebar conversation where we can really kind of sit down and have a nice little good conversation about, the potentials that are here. So, and not miss the mark, because, Connor, I'm glad you mentioned what you said, because that was a curveball that I went like, whoa. Absolutely, and we want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be efficiently done and not cost you guys and us additional funding, because they're not that they're doing a bad job at their software, but their software is not benefiting us. That's all. So outside of that, yeah, good job, very educational, and thank you again. And Fred, I think we should set up that meeting for all of us on a sidebar, not a committee setup, but just some conversation. So you and I, Madam Mayor, we can kind of, not Madam Chair, that we kind of get this whole thing, wrapped around, get our arms around it, because it's a lot from what I just heard. Thank you again. And that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to limit our liability. The county has enough going on in the legal realm, so we since you saw this, Deputy Connor, we thank you for bringing it to our attention, because we want to mitigate that as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. So we hear you. All right. With that being said, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.